Sometimes I've wondered out loud, or I've heard people wonder out loud, why was Jesus crucified? Like, what was it that actually compelled the people around the Son of God to crucify him? Because that's a pretty extreme decision. That's a pretty extreme movement, aggression towards Jesus. That apparently he has done something, at least in their eyes, or he has apparently said something that was so scandalous that eventually they said, enough's enough, we're going to crucify him. As a matter of fact, one of the things that makes it even more interesting is knowing historically like what crucifixions were typically reserved for. Typically, you would reserve a crucifixion for a political revolutionary. Rome usually doesn't get involved in these low-level squabbles. For Rome to actually get involved and to be willing to crucify someone, there must be something quite significant. There must be something quite scandalous. There must be something that Rome says we can no longer stand this, allow this, engage this. As I think through the Gospels, I begin to realize, actually Jesus was way more political than I give him credit for. Maybe even more political than I'm comfortable with him being. For example, Matthew chapter 6. In Matthew chapter 6, we're right in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. So Jesus gives the Beatitude in Matthew chapter 5. He talks about, the different things that you've heard it said before, but now I say to you, the way in which he has come to fulfill the law. Matthew chapter 6 begins with a discussion on giving to the needy, but then it moves into a discussion on prayer. And Jesus says this in verse 9, this is how you should pray. Which, wouldn't that be awesome to just be able to have the one we're praying to say, this is how you should pray? Incredibly, I've realized the more that I ask that question, the more I overlook the fact that he has told us quite often. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with a student last night, and she is very, very new to the faith. And we were talking about prayer and about how it doesn't need to be elaborate. As a matter of fact, I told her, I said, now, because we were dealing with an issue, I said, now you're moving into the stage of this service to your friend, her friend who's actually been in an abusive relationship, and we're trying to get her help. And I said, now you have given your friend all of the resources that she can possibly engage. You've shown her, you've given her the numbers, you've compelled her to report it to the police. You are saying, I will go with you, I can point you in the right directions, I can help you get out of this. She said, now her friend received the word, but her friend still never made the call. I said, now is the time you move into the moments of prayer, where what you do is you actually envision holding her up before the Lord. Don't try to pray the right thing. Don't try to say the right magic formula. Just hold your friend up to the Lord, and you don't even have to say a word. And her response I thought was awesome. She goes, oh, I thought prayer was supposed to be more elaborate than that. I thought it was more complicated. And I kind of sat there and thought, I feel like in some sense I've gone full circle, because I remember feeling like prayer needed to be more complicated than what it truly is. What prayer actually is at its core is a posture of receptivity for whatever the Lord wants to give you. It is a giving of yourself, an emptying of yourself to receive something from the Lord. And in some sense, it's an emptying of ourselves of our time and giving it to someone else, even though that person doesn't directly see us handing them time. No, instead, we are spending time on them by giving them up to the Lord. But I digress. Jesus says in chapter 6, verse 9, this is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. So far, so good. Nothing controversial there. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Now, if you're a Roman, and you hear this guy telling this is what you need to pray to God, I want you to pray for another kingdom to come, and another will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And Rome's going, wait. We are the will being done on earth. We are favored by the gods. We are the outworking on the earth of the will of heaven. And you're asking for a new one to come? In some sense, I don't know if we noticed this, but that opening line is a political threat. In order for a new kingdom to come and a new will be done on earth as it is in heaven, the old kingdom on earth and the old will being done will have to be replaced. Jesus then says something equally scandalous. Give us today our daily bread. If you knew the job of the Roman emperor, you would see the difficulty of saying that statement. You see, the Roman emperor has really three things that they are responsible for. Number one, as far back as the 2nd century BC, the Roman emperor would actually be responsible for providing for the monthly rations of bread for all of the citizens of Rome, in the city of Rome, all of them that could not afford it. The Roman emperor's job was to provide for the monthly rations that would ultimately function as provision for the daily bread of every Roman citizen. The Roman emperor also had the job of, they were the final judge of all debts. So for Roman citizens, so if you're a citizen of Rome and you feel like that there's a debt that's being collected that is unfair or unjust, you can appeal to Caesar. And you have a right as a Roman citizen to go to the judge and for them to make a ruling on your debt or perceived debt, which is what Paul actually does in Acts. The Roman emperor also had the job to be the one that led the Pax Romana, to be the one that secured peace, protection of the Roman citizens from their enemies. Those are their three primary jobs. Now listen to how Jesus prays. Give us today, God, our daily bread. Not the emperor. I want God to give me my provision. And forgive us our debts as we also forgive our debtors. Why? Because God is the ultimate judge, not the emperor. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Keep us safe. Keep us secure. Give us peace. See, what Jesus prays for in Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13, is for another kingdom to come and another will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then he also prays for another king, another emperor to reign in the lives of those of us that would at the time have been in the Roman Empire. This prayer is incredibly political, but don't allow the prayer's political nature to mistake the fact that Jesus' target was Rome. It wasn't Rome. It was bigger than Rome. But here's one of the things I want you to hear this week, starting off this week from the Lord's Prayer. You are the answer to the Lord's Prayer. You are the kingdom on earth. You are the will of heaven being done on earth. You are the manifestation of the Lord's Prayer. And so here is my challenge this week. Live it. Embrace it. Trust it. That God delights in the fact that the cure and the remedy for all of the brokenness of this world, whether we're talking on the national level or the individual one, is for us, church, to be the answer to the Lord's Prayer so that His will can be done on earth as it is in heaven. I love you guys. It's good talking to you. Talk to you next week.